What is the process through which Mashiach will be revealed according to the Rambam?
What is the process through which Mashiach will be revealed according to the Rambam? The answer to that question is that the Rambam himself says we don't know, and we shouldn't even try and figure it out. He brings the Maimon Chazal, Teipach Rucham Shal Mechashve Kitzim, which means that it's not a desirable thing to try and calculate the ketz. And the Rambam does not only include in that the date of the coming of Mashiach, but also the process of the coming of Mashiach, what's going to happen before, what's going to happen later. By contrast, the Tzaddik Gaon has a whole chapter in his Sefer, Emunas V'Deis, a Nivche Emunas V'Deis, called Al HaYeshua, where he tells the story of Mashiach's coming with Mashiach ben Yosef, Mashiach ben David, like as if it's already happened, like a narrative that's so explicit and so clear. I once made years and years ago a Sefer, which never got published, which was a compilation of the Rebbe's Siches on Rambam, in Hilchos Mashiach, and also in Hilchos Elam Haba, in Hilchos Tshuva. And I included in that Sefer the part of the Rasag, because it's so interesting to see the contrast. The Rambam says you shouldn't research it, and the Tzaddik Gaon gives you a very detailed outline. Now, there is, however, in Rambam some detail. There's a mention of Gog Magog, there's a mention of Eliyahu Hanavi, and there's also a mention of Yichus, of a person, either a tzaddik before Mashiach or Mashiach himself, determining whether Jews are kosher or not kosher from the perspective of genealogy. And the Rebbe has a sikha, the Hadrin that the Rebbe spoke, Yud Shvat Tov Shin Mem Zayin, which was the third time we completed the Rambam, where the Rebbe observes that the Rambam does something incredibly uncharacteristic, because he brings you 2 or 3 different opinions. The Rambam is supposed to paskin. And here he brings you one opinion, he brings various different opinions. And what the Rebbe says is that Mashiach is going to do many different things. The different opinions in the Rambam are not debating whether he will do them or not, but whether he will do them as Melech HaMashiach or he's going to do them before or after being Melech HaMashiach. There's also a mention of a Navi, Eliyahu, who will come before Mashiach and do these kinds of things. And there's also a reference to Gog Magog. But aside for those handful of details, the Rambam's opinion is that we shouldn't research it. And the reason is, the way it's understood from the Rebbe Siches and also from the Rambam's own writings, is because Mashiach can come in more than one way. In other words, there's halachas that define who Mashiach is. There's dinim that define who Mashiach is. There's also dinim that define what happens after Mashiach comes. For example, the Rambam does write that after Mashiach comes and everything is settled, there will certainly be an event of his yachsus, where people are going to have to determine their yichus using nevuah or HaKadosh, whatever the case is. But that it's not a part of the process of the coming of Mashiach. It's something that happens subsequent to that. So there's dinim about who Mashiach is. There's dinim about how we know that the times of Mashiach have already begun. And there's dinim that have to happen subsequent to that. But the process of how Mashiach is actually revealed is something that the Rambam considers unimportant. That's what he says. It's medrash. It's not important. What's important is learning the halachas of what defines Melech HaMashiach. And the process is not in our hands. And again, as I mentioned before, part of the reason is because we know the Mashiach could come be'ita, and Mashiach could come achishena. Mashiach can come because the time for Mashiach has arrived. Mashiach can also come because we've earned him, or we bring him early. And if Mashiach comes be'ita, Mashiach comes because the time has come, it's conceivable that the coming of Mashiach happens before we're entirely ready for him. On the other hand, if Mashiach comes achishena, if we hasten the coming of Mashiach because we earned him, so then Mashiach comes after we deserve him. And this ties into another uncertainty which is found in Rambam. That is that we know that the Rambam writes in Hilchos Melochim Perikid Beis, Ein b'ne'elam amru chachamim, ein b'ne'elam azeli meisa Mashiach l'shivit malchis b'vad. The Rambam follows the opinion that the times of Mashiach are not miraculous; they're natural. And the Nevi'im, call the Nevi'im l'snabu, they speak about le'el mabot, not le'meisa Mashiach. The supernatural events described in the prophecies are not talking about the times of Mashiach, but rather about the world to come. So in one of the Rambam's letters, I think it's against Taman, the Rambam writes, Ein davar zeh achleti, that this that I wrote in the Sefer Mishnah Torah, Yad HaChazaka, what we call Rambam conventionally, that Mashiach's coming is natural is a minimal shir. It's a halachic. In other words, these are halachic requirements. But we're not certain whether Mashiach is going to come naturally or not naturally. So he writes, I included in the Rambam only those aspects in halacha, which in a halacha lemaise, but the question of miracles I didn't include because it's not halachically a necessity, but whether it will or will not happen is an uncertainty. So when the Rebbe Siches, the Rebbe explains what is the basis for the Rambam's uncertainty. The basis is this question of Be'ita or Achishan. If Mashiach comes because we earned him, we can assume, like the Ravid Paskins on this Rambam, that Mashiach is going to come, in a supernatural way. On the other hand, if Mashiach comes Be'ita, in other words, because the time came when we didn't deserve it, so we're going to have to earn Mashiach after Mashiach comes. Quite similar to our earning Yetzias Mitzrayim after Yetzias Mitzrayim occurred, like it says in Likutei Sichos Chelik Yudzayin, page 78, that classic Sicha, that until Mashiach comes, we're earning Yetzias Mitzrayim. If Mashiach comes Be'ita, that means after Mashiach comes, we're still going to earn him. So that means Mashiach's coming is connected to a world of Teva. And the Rebbe argues further that it's impossible to say that the Rambam holds that Mashiach's era has nothing to do with miracles ever. It's impossible to say that. This is Chelik Yitches Bolok. Because the Rambam holds that Tchias HaMeisim is a part of Mashiach. We hold that Tchias HaMeisim, that means the Kabbalists hold that Tchias HaMeisim is El Mabah, is the world to come. The Rambam holds El Haba, with Pashtus, is Neshama B'li Guf, is spiritual. So the resurrection that according to the Rambam is a part of Yemei Mashiach, and the resurrection that is considered the greatest miracle ever. So when the Rambam writes that Eben El Mazeli Yemei Mashiach El Shibud Malchi is Bavad, there's not going to be miracles, that cannot be for the entire duration of the Messianic era. It can only be in what the Rebbe calls the first Tkufa. But in the later Tkufa, there have to be miracles, including the greatest miracle of all, which is Tchias HaMeisim, and Shinim and Hagei Shaleilam, and so forth and so on. So the way it's understood from all of the above is the following: that if we earn Mashiach, Mashiach comes miraculously. And the ideas of the goat lying with the lion, with the leopard, and the goat, and the ox lying with the lion, and little children playing with venomous snakes will be literal. If, on the other hand, Mashiach comes because the time has come, we haven't earned him, so then it starts out more natural, and then it goes towards miraculous as we earn and deserve Mashiach after the coming of Mashiach. How will the Jewish people recognize who Mashiach is? I'm giving you a Rambam answer. I tell this to my students all the time, and I frequently shock them when I tell them something so plain and obvious. What is the most important word in the Rambam's halachas when he talks about Mashiach? What is the single most important word in the Maimonidean texts when he talks about Mashiach? The answer is Matzliach. The Rambam holds that David HaMelech was Mashiach. The Rambam holds to a lesser degree all Malchi Yisrael Akshedim, certainly Malchi Yehuda was Mashiach. What separates them from the final Mashiach is that he sees it all through. The 4 steps of his influence on Yidden, his influence, his own personal righteousness, that's number 1. His influence on Yidden, that's number 2. His influence on the world through coercion, that's number 3. And his influence on the world through education, that's number 4. Im also v'etzliach. And he sees it all through, and he's teaching the whole world about Malchus of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Harei ze Mashiach bavadei. Mashiach is determined to be Mashiach by his actual and practical success. To use a simple parallel for this, that Rebbe brings in the Siche about Achan Shapesach, that we don't say Shechayonu. Because Shechayonu you can't say about something that's going to happen. You can only say about something that's happened already. And the Tzemach Tzedek said that the beginning of Pesach is the Yom Tov of the beginning of Geula, the end of Pesach is the Yom Tov of the end of Geula, namely Mashiach. And that the Chassidish reason, not the halachic reason, the Chassidish reason, why we don't say Shechayonu and Achan Shal Pesach, we can't say Shechayonu on something which is potential and not actual. And the inyan of Mashiach is actualization. So there's a category of Cheskes Shehu Mashiach, and which is significant. And by the way, there seems to be implication, even though Malchei Yisrael have to have Mashiach B'Keren B'Pach, it's possible that Mashiach would Yamid Melech, he'll be a Melech without Mashiach, but the determination of his being Mashiach on the various levels, B'chaskas Shel Mashiach and Mashiach B'vadai, are determined by the degree of his success, as the Rambam spells out what success makes him B'chaskas Shel Mashiach and what success makes him Mashiach B'vadai. Will the recognition come as a result of heavenly revelation, or will the Jewish people also have a role in identifying him using Torah guidelines? When we say Torah lei b'shamayim, not based on other revelations. Okay, now, again, when Mashiach is going to come, there's going to be Nevuah. Whether Mashiach himself is a Navi is another lumdis. He doesn't have to be a Navi, like it says in Hilchos Mashiach. But on the other hand, in Hilchos Tshuva, it's written that he's going to be a Navi, Godel Karev L'Madrigas Moshe Rabbeinu. And on that basis, he's going to teach us the Torah Chadashah, like the Rebbe says in a different Sikha. But there will certainly be Nevuah in the times of Mashiach. So will another Navi or Mashiach himself use Nevuah to reveal himself? Again, according to the Rambam, this is not a requirement, one way or another. We're not going to know, the Rambam's words, we're not going to know how these things are going to be until they're going to be. The halachic criteria for Mashiach is fixed by physical and observable facts, the degree of his success. And there's no need for Torah B'Shamayim, there's no need for Nevuah, there's no need for Ruach HaKodesh, and so forth. If there'll be Nevi'im, and they'll tell us that he's Mashiach, so then we'll know before the success that he's going to have the success, and he's going to see it through, and so forth and so on. So my answer again is, it's not necessary. And there is a halachic definition to define Mashiach Tzidkenu, which is absolute. It requires no miracle. It's possible that there'll be Nevuah. But then again, in the Rambam's words, we do not know how these things are going to be until they actually occur. And the bottom line is, we want Mashiach now. But now.